Thank you for checking out Lakehead International's videos. You're about to watch one of our Lakehead International live webinars, a fun and informative way to learn more about Lakehead while also meeting faculty, staff, and current students. If you have any questions throughout today's video, please comment below. Otherwise, let's get started. And it's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome and introduce Dr. Todd Randall, the Dean of the Faculty of Science and Environmental Studies. Todd, I'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Jordan. As Jordan said, my name is Todd Randall. I'm Dean for the Faculty of Science and Environmental Studies here at Lakehead University. I came to Lakehead in 2002 as a faculty member in the Department of Geography. As a younger person, I always loved maps. My friends gave me some critique about that in terms of use of pencil crayons, something you probably don't know about so much anymore. But it led me to my interest in the physical landscape, and particularly in the way in which glaciers have influenced that landscape. That was my primary interest for both my undergrad and my first of my graduate degrees. I then stepped over to McMaster, took a geography degree there, and then for my PhD, again, I was always more interested in the applied nature of the work that I was doing, and I met up with a fellow who was doing research on sustainable urban development. And so my geographic background on looking at the spatial distribution of things, understanding how cities were planned, and sort of really lended itself well to thinking about a better way for cities to be built into the future. So came to Lakehead, again, a relatively small school, in a small department, I should say. And I teach courses in GIS, I teach courses in urban planning, as well as in my initial love of sort of glacial and other related landscapes.
Incredible. I didn't realize that your journey was so rich in terms of your different studies, but also then where you've been in terms of those degrees that you've accomplished. So congratulations to you. I know academia is a journey and there's continued learning through academia. On that note, I think it's always great to chat a bit about your pathway. So from geography, now leading an entire faculty with so many programs and such a broad range of different types. Could you share with the audience sort of what it's like to step into that role and what you've accomplished in your deanship?
Well, so I was a faculty member for about 10 years or so before an opportunity came up. At that time, we just needed an acting dean for 6 months. Somebody had stepped out of the role for a short period of time. I think as a geographer and a planner, I was always interested kind of in planning and logistics and administrative type work. And so and I have a good foundational background in science. And so I think we, as the dean for the Faculty of Science, and we have 10 departments across our across our two campuses. And I've I guess I've really enjoyed the opportunity to sort of be the academic lead for those programs. And I mean, my role as an administrator, sort of an academic administrator, is to help my faculty members and staff be successful in the delivery of those programs and in their own professional journeys towards their own individual careers. So, if a brand new physics prof, maybe they've come in fresh off a PhD or a postdoc or something, my role together with the department is to help them be successful in getting some research grants, working with our teaching commons to get their teaching materials prepped and ready for that very first year or two, and be as successful in their career. So again, I'm very fortunate that again, I've got a range, quite a diversity of faculty members to supervise and oversee here in the Faculty of Science.
Awesome. And I know you mentioned, I'm going to jump back to a previous conversation you had where you said that we are a smaller campus community. And that's definitely true. We are a smaller university here at Lakehead. Specifically within your faculty, how do you think that's aided student services, supports, access to opportunities? What is your thoughts around that?
Well, I mean, as a small institution, smaller class sizes, typically our first year class size is at most 150 students in our bigger courses like, biology or chemistry, or geography. Some of them would be certainly smaller than that. But I mean, so in slightly smaller classes like that, and it provides greater interaction with that instructor in the front of the classroom or however the course happened to be set up. it also means that as you move through your program, your classes do get even smaller still. Professors begin to know who you are in terms of your name. Um, you'll learn more about their own personal research interest, and there are opportunities that faculty take on students either as thesis students during your undergraduate degree or as a summer research assistant, where you can get some hands-on experience and learn about research either through one of those kind of training opportunities. So it's something that doesn't happen as often at a bigger school. I think just by virtue of our size. And even, I mean, we have our departmental chairs are your program advisors. So if you're a biology student, and you're getting your annual conversation with your program advisor or as needed, you're talking to a faculty member. Like, so there's always this, it's a little bit more, um, uh, yeah, you're a little more connected to the faculty member as opposed to a larger institution.
Certainly, yeah, and of course, drawing on those connections and establishing those relationships early on in your academic journey, I think has led to great success in terms of both employment opportunities, summer job opportunities, and then even furthering education. So, for our audience sake, could you share more with them as to what they can anticipate after their Lakehead degree? Where do the students typically go, or where do we see them move on to?
Well, it really depends on your field of interest in terms of career opportunities, obviously, and where we typically see students go. So again, in the Faculty of Science, we have everything from anthropology, biology, chemistry, computer science, a number of environmental programs, physics, and so forth. Um, all undergraduate degrees could lead to advanced study if you want to do a graduate degree, a master's, or even onto a PhD. But many of our programs, things like chemistry in medical science or applied life science biology, those students find themselves interested in a professional programs such as medicine or pharmacy. So we do provide some advice to students during their undergraduate journey to give them some advice on how to meet the admission requirements for those types of programs. We've seen lots of students find their way into the local medical school in Northern Ontario, the Northern Ontario School of Medicine, or NOSM. Um, in terms of other experiences, computer science grads, it's a really hot market for computer science in this day and age. Often an undergraduate degree might be enough to get you in that door. Our computer science program has a co-op option as part of that. Again, gets you some vocational experience concurrent with your undergraduate degree. So those students may find the job market, satisfactory at this time. They can just go straight off to a career. Others would want to do a master's in computer science before doing that.
Very interesting. And obviously looking ahead within academia, it's natural to think, what does the future hold? So what is your vision for the faculty, or what's on the horizon for future students in the years to come?
Well, we're working on some exciting initiatives in the faculty. We've had students. We have a number of partnerships. So we have a partnership with Confederation College in our Thunder Bay campus. We have a very successful partnership with Georgian College in Simcoe County. In Simcoe County, we've had 4 programs over the last 6 or 7 years in partnership with Georgian. One of our programs there that's been very successful is computer science. We also have environmental sustainability and applied life science in that Simcoe County. We are seeing growth in Simcoe County in terms of student enrollment and program development. Very excited to be working on a new STEM hub with some engineering programs and computer science, likely to be in the city of Barrie. Another exciting partnership for Lakehead University is our partnership with the University of Guelph around addressing a long-standing shortage of veterinarians in northern and underserviced areas of Ontario. And so the province has funded some additional veterinary spots to be part of the Ontario Vet College. This is a Guelph program, but Lakehead will be co-delivering that program starting in, I think, fall of 26 or 27. So at Lakehead, our students who might be interested in that kind of professional pathway following their undergraduate degree will be working with you to make sure you're informed of the types of things that you need to do as an undergraduate to be successful into admission into that kind of program that would be administered by Guelph. So some very exciting things going on in the faculty in the near to medium term for sure.
Certainly, it sounds like it. And as we wrap up our conversation, I always like to give you an opportunity if you had 60 seconds or less to share with the audience why choose Lakehead or why Faculty of Science and Environmental Studies. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, like much of the university of education, there's sort of there's a sort of two part of it. There's there's the pure knowledge that you're going to gain through your coursework, that kind of thing. Um, we're very adept, like most institutions are, at having an experiential component as part of your training. So whether it's in the laboratory or a field course or a field trip, so we've got great opportunities in geology, environmental sustainability for those types of field courses. Um, as well, the skills you're going to get in laboratories in biology and chemistry and physics are going to be very valuable for you to go on. I think one opportunity that I said earlier that we really do well at Lakehead is the experience around research. If students want a taste of research, it's quite easy to get that experience either as part of a course or as part of a summer experience under the supervision of a faculty member and working with a team of other like-minded researchers. So those are the things that come to mind for me. Thanks, Jordan.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time, Dr. Randall. It's been a pleasure to host you. And next, we're going to explore a bit more about your faculty and the programs that you offer, as well as unique learning opportunities.
Thanks very much, Jordan.
As we continue learning more about the Faculty of Science and Environmental Studies, I want to take you on a bit of an overview of the faculty. And first and foremost, to our audience, I think the important question you should be posing yourself is what program should I be studying in? So I want to help find your program essentially and remind you of the four areas or thematic areas that our programs fall within under. So first and foremost, we have our environmental science and policy, where studies involve the distribution and interaction between humans and physical features. These features include the whole system, such as ecosphere, hydrospheres, and atmosphere. And understanding and being able to actually evaluate environmental issues and choices in a sound scientific manner is really the focus of those programs. We also have life sciences, which focuses on the areas of sciences that study living organisms. And the programs that we deliver use a multidisciplinary approach to explain how living systems work. And these areas of study reduce our natural world, pardon me, to its most basic principles to observe patterns in all living organisms, from bacteria all the way to humans. We also have our physical sciences and our mathematics, where it's essentially about problem solving, to simplify it at best. Of course, you have to solve problems that are focusing on understanding structures in our day-to-day lives, as well as theoretical ones behind them, or the theories behind them. So those theories include the study of matter and what it's made of and how it interacts. You also use dynamic modeling, which is a key element of the programs within this domain or theme. And then, of course, we have technology, which is all about using the right tools to analyze data in our world. So those tools will enable you to shape the future, since the study of physical characteristics of the world and beyond. Communication, information storage, and human-computer interactions are common features within technology. Diving a bit deeper and revealing our undergraduate programs, we have a wide range of programs within this faculty. It's one of our largest in terms of the diverse offerings it has. So I won't read the list for you, but I will call attention to some of the most popular, of course, our applied life sciences, biology, chemistry, are common pathways into medical schools for our students. Computer science is a booming industry and program, and it has a robust offering and diverse course options for students. All of our environmental sciences and studies and sustainability programs are ever more prevalent today, given the nature of the world and as it evolves. For those students that are not quite sure yet, you also have your general science or your Science 1 here at Lakehead. Beyond that, if you're looking to further your studies, or for those students that are joining us after already completing their bachelor's degree, we do have master's and doctoral programs. Once again, I won't read this list, but you can draw from conclusions here as to what we offer in that diverse range. If you would like to learn more about any one of the programs you've seen on the screen so far, you're more than welcome to visit our website at lakeheadu.ca. Once you navigate to your program and the desired level of education you would like to pursue, then you can learn more about what the program actually offers and what it entails. Chatting a bit about highlights within this faculty, of course, circling back on the idea that having over 22 majors available allows for and really gives you the opportunity to have a flexible degree and customize your options. So whether you're going to have a double major, a double degree, concentration, specializations, minors, concurrent education, the list goes on and how you can customize that degree. But I think that for our students on today's webinar, you can learn more on our website and really determine what's going to be the best fit and perhaps what career do I want to get out of it at the end of the day and maybe working your way backwards from there. As a student at Lakehead, all the way from undergrads all the way to the highest level of doctoral, you'll have access to state-of-the-art laboratories in a wide range of our programs. Typically at larger institutions, those state-of-the-art laboratories and equipment are reserved for upper year students or master's graduate students. However, at the undergraduate level, we do our best to start to integrate that technology and that use right in to your first year. Also, given the fact that our locations are accessible to the nature and our access to the natural environment really lends well to the classroom environment. Being able to conduct research right within our field programs and field schools, you'll have that right on the doorstep here at Lakehead University, which is pretty awesome. And last but not least, having a paid co-op work experience in your program is going to really enhance your learning experience in terms of being able to apply that theory and that knowledge you've gained within your program and going into the workforce, finding a contract job and actually using that to your advantage to gain really incredible Canadian work experience, and then bringing that back, wrapping up your final year in the degree typically, and then moving into the career workforce or perhaps to the next level of education. And last but not least, you may be asking yourself, what can I get out of my degree within this faculty? Well, our career outcomes are vast. Of course, this was a vast faculty to begin with in terms of its programs and offerings. So this is by no means an exhaustive list. It just gives you an idea of where our grads have gone in the past. So I won't read them off to you, but it will give you a better idea as the options perhaps that you can pursue one day. Like I said before, if you want to learn more, you can always join us on our website, lakeheadu.ca. Otherwise, though, I think it's time to actually shift gears here and sit down with a current student in computer science and learn more about her experience. I would like to take the opportunity to introduce and welcome our guest, one of our current computer science students, Namrata, who is joining us to share a bit about her experience in the program. I'll pass it over to her to introduce herself and share a bit more about where she came from, what program she's in, and what she's up to nowadays. So over to you.
Hello all, myself Namrata Jagadish and my program is Masters in Computer Science project-based program. I'm also doing my co-op along with it. I'm basically from Bangalore and I've completed 1 year of my master's program. Now I'm doing my co-op and I have 2 more terms to complete in regards to project.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. I'm excited to learn more about your studies in the program, but also, of course, about some of the additional experiences you've had an opportunity to partake in. So let's start there. Could you share? I know you've done your first year of academics of the courses. What are the highlights so far? Are there any impactful professors that you've interacted with? Uh, I'll pass over to you to speak to that.
Yes, definitely. So I would say Dr. Al from my big data class. So he laid importance both on how to write a research paper as well as on the project. So this built a strong foundation on the concepts, and he continues to be a good support. And another professor I would like to mention here is Dr. Fihati from my research class, where she made sure that everybody were knowledgeable with regards to research and how to write a paper right from the scratch until how you write do a project and come up with a paper to that. I think research is also an important component to it. So I would say these two professors, but overall academics was quite good. Coming to co-curriculars, been a part of leadership program, which is again a good opportunity to network out there and volunteer and give back to the community. And been a part of Google Developer Student Club at Lakehead University. Last year, we just hosted like a dev fest, which was one of a kind in Thunder Bay. So it's been great so far.
Awesome. Well, I want to go back a bit here. You mentioned on the second professor, you were doing research actually within the course. Could you share with the audience a bit about what that entailed, what topic you were pursuing and what you were able to accomplish.
So my research project was on a job matching portal. So I named it Job Tricks. So it matches the skills of the user with the job role rather than just landing a job where they would not excel in. So my aim was to help graduates, recent graduates, and even undergraduates to find positions that actually suited their skill set. So it takes the input as 18 or more skills, and it has a machine learning component to it. So it is going to predict the jobs and it's going to get the job done and list the positions which they would be best suited to. And the portal has an internal site where they could apply to it, and all these jobs are scraped from an external site using web scraping.
Okay, interesting. I'm happy to hear, obviously, you noted it matches students based on skills and actually jobs that they would excel in versus, just fitting a role or checking a box essentially, to be
Right.
satisfied that you have a job. You want to be successful in that job and you want to enjoy that job. So that's very exciting to hear. You also mentioned that you are now wrapped up in terms of your first year of academics, but you're in a co-op experience. So could you share with the audience where the co-op is and what you're working on right now in terms of how it ties into computer science?
So I'm doing my co-op with Ontario Public Service as a student developer. So basically, my day-to-day tasks involve both development part of it as well as the testing component, which is quite essential for a computer science student. I'm working on two projects. One is the digital compliance platform, and the other would be a licensing portal for the public to apply to licenses, where I'm performing script automation basically.
So for that first one with the compliance piece, could you elaborate a bit about what the tool is or what the function is behind it and also what work you're specifically doing?
So in the digital compliance platform is basically an umbrella which all the ministries use this portal in order to perform their day-to-day tasks, be it report generation or addition of records. So my task here is to move the applications. Say if they've submitted an application, I have learned how to change the status to it because it has certain logic to it, and I'm now familiar with addition of records and even report creation. There are various reports to deal with. So that would be my role in digital compliance platform.
And how about the second one? What is your role in there? What's perhaps something you've learned already?
So this was a new tool which the government was just trying. My team was just trying out there. So that tool we had to learn it from scratch, and my task was to come up with a scripts, write the scripts using JavaScript for a certain component that is the agency license part of it. So right now I've come up with around 20 scripts, coordinating with a senior developer, senior tester. So that would be my day-to-day task. So currently I'm working on it. Hopefully it is all done in December.
Awesome. Well, I wish you all the best in those projects, and I hope that they've been a good learning experience and obviously an opportunity for you to use the knowledge you've built through your courses at Lakehead to apply that and obviously go beyond now. Um, I don't want to take too much of your time, so I'll ask the final question. If you have any advice for future students, what would you say to them before they come out to Lakehead?
I would say they have to be involved in both academics as well as co-curriculars because here networking is important, be it making friends or building professional connections. So it is quite essential in order to apply to jobs or be it having someone whom you can rely on in difficult times, and not to shy away from opportunities and thinking that little of themselves that they cannot do it. Instead, they have to give it a shot, and who knows, it might work out for them.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Namrata, for joining us. It's been a pleasure. To our audience, next we're going to meet one of our researchers within the Faculty of Science and Environmental Studies, so I'll see you over there. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome Dr. Deschamps, who is a professor within the Faculty of Science and Environmental Studies, more specifically in the Department of Geology. I'll pass it over to her to introduce herself and share a bit more about what she's been up to over the last little while. So over to you.
Great. Well, thanks and welcome to the webinar. I'm excited that you're joining to learn a bit more about the faculty and Lakehead. So I'm an associate professor in the Department of Geology, and I joined the faculty here in 2012. And I'm also the coordinator of the water resource science and water science programs here at Lakehead. I'm also the faculty research chair. And when I come back from my sabbatical this year in July of 2025, I'll also step into the role of assistant dean in the faculty.
That's very exciting news. I hope that you have a
Yeah.
fruitful sabbatical. But before you part ways, we'll get to learn a bit more about what research you've endeavored in and what that looks like. So take us through what are you currently pursuing in terms of your broader research, and then maybe some of the projects that you've been involved in the last little while.
Awesome. So my research program really focuses on understanding how disturbances or changes in the environment with things like climate change and fire and harvesting for food and fiber production and nutrient management practice, how those impact organic matter stores in the soil and really how they impact the cycling of carbon and nitrogen in the soil. And so the overall goal of this is really to help to better understand these processes, but also to help guide management and policy decisions. And so over the last several years, I've been working locally with Thunder Bay Pulp and Paper. They were Resolute, and looking at how they can divert some of the residuals they produce from their operations. So they're a pulp and paper mill. And like many pulp and paper mills in Canada, they burn some of their waste residues for energy. And so this creates wood ash, which is very similar to what you would get if you burn wood in a stove in your home or at a campfire. And that wood ash can be used to increase the pH of the soil, and it also contains lots of nutrients. They also produce a material that, I mean, in industry, it's known as sludge, but it's really it's quite similar to an animal manure in its nutrient concentration. And so both of these materials can be land applied for benefit in both forests and agricultural systems, but oftentimes they're landfilled at a cost to the producer. And so a lot of my work is looking at how we can divert those waste materials onto the land. And, you know, I do often pose that question, are they trash or are they treasure? And so we look at how that land application at rates that are regulated by the government how that impacts the productivity of the plants that grow there and also the health and soil organic matter stores. Another area that I've been working in is land conversion. And so, you know, we typically think of climate change, we think about all the negative aspects of climate change, but it presents an opportunity for agricultural expansion in northern regions. Climate's warming, temperature and moisture conditions are changing, and that's expanding the area that we can grow crops in further north. But as we move further north, and if anybody's been to Thunder Bay or looked at it on a map, you know, there's lots of forest out there. So that forest has to be converted to fields. And traditionally, this has been done by removing all of the wood and then pushing all the stumps and big roots and topsoil into piles. Those piles either get pushed off to the field or they're burnt, but they're removed. And so we're removing organic matter that would otherwise become part of the soil. And that degrades soil quality. And we usually see pretty big losses. But they're smart people. And they are saying, hey, I want to do things differently this time. And so they're looking at, instead of removing all of that organic matter, taking off what's, you can make some money from, but then also grinding up that material and returning it into the soil. And so there's still a lot of unknowns about what that means for plant production, what it means for soil health. But there's a lot of promise there. And we've been looking at how we can make things maybe a little less bad.
Very interesting. I'm happy to hear that you're working on some focused initiatives that will help sustainability for future generations, but also looking to the future and seeing what are the effects that are going to be playing a role, and perhaps, as you mentioned, what are the opportunities? Although, of course, there's a significant conversation around what are the challenges right now. I'm curious, and I'm sure our audience would love to know, how could students get involved in research like this, or perhaps how is research and just getting hands-on experience built into some of the curriculum that you deliver?
Awesome. Well, great question. And having that hands-on experiential learning and research experiences were something that I really valued as an undergraduate. And so that's something that I try to integrate into the courses that I deliver and my research program, because I really value undergraduate involvement. And so I teach a course in environmental geology and biogeochemistry, and I deliver an environmental field course. And where possible, I bring my research into these courses to both get students thinking about how to ask a question, but also how to answer a question. And in my biogeochemistry course, I've had students involved in the research projects, in looking at data from those research projects. And I also often employ students in the summer to work within my research program and also to develop their own research projects that usually take the form of an honors thesis.
Very interesting. And I know that we've previously discussed some of the coursework that you've helped develop actually with Parks Canada. So perhaps you could share a bit with the audience of what that looks like.
So the year I started, we developed this memorandum of understanding with Parks Canada, and we started delivery of a field course at one of their national parks, which is about 3 hours east of town. And so within our field course experience, which has evolved, but students live and work in small groups to really try and emulate that field experience and working as a team in a field research group and asking a question. And so a lot of the values and indicators that Parks Canada are using to look at ecological integrity within the park are things that we incorporate into the course so that students are gaining that hands-on real world experience that will hopefully translate into the job market.
Great. Well, thank you again for taking the time to share more with us a bit about the research you've been participating in and managing, and of course, teasing the audience a bit about what they can anticipate in terms of opportunities when they join us here at Lakehead. So thank you again for that. To our audience, next we're going to sit down with a different researcher within the Faculty of Science and Environmental Studies, so I'll meet you over there. And with that, it's my honor and distinct pleasure to introduce and welcome Dr. Rennie to our webinar today. He is joining us from the Faculty of Science and Environmental Studies. I'll pass it over to him, though, to introduce himself, and we'll dive a bit deeper into his research and more at Lakehead. So over to you.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Jordan. So my name's Mike Rennie. I am an associate professor in the Department of Biology here at Lakehead University. I'm also a Canada Research Chair in Freshwater Ecology and Fisheries and a research fellow with the IISD Experimental Lakes area.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us. I'm excited to have you on today's webinar. I know I've heard in the news and in our articles at Lakehead a lot about your research, but to our audience, I'm sure they're excited to hear more and hear it directly from the source. So with that being said, if you don't mind diving into a bit about the research projects you've taken on over the past couple of years.
Sure. So being a research fellow at the Experimental Lakes area, about half of my research program ends up going on out there. And so the great thing about that location is it's one of the few places on the earth where you can do whole lake experiments. So we try to do these experiments in order to help try and guide environmental policy. So with emerging contaminants, trying to understand things like, we've done experiments in the past on acid rain, synthetic estrogen, mercury. One of the ones that we're currently involved in, that I'm involved in right now, is looking at a whole lake edition of microplastics. So this is it's an international collaboration with researchers from Canada and the US. And yeah, so we're sort of 2 years into a 3-year edition and trying to understand sort of what the fate of these contaminants is. So like where in the lake do they end up and outside the lake? And then also trying to understand what the impacts are on the organisms that live in the lake, everything from algae to fish. And then the other main component of my research is sort of focused on Great Lakes ecosystems, which works out really well. We're right on the shore of Lake Superior here at Lakehead University. And so I work closely with a lot of government organizations to try and understand, well, I guess one example of a project that we're currently involved in is looking at long-range movement patterns of walleye across the North Shore of Lake Superior. So we have a telemetry array that's set out listening to tagged fish in the lake all the way from the U.S. border about a half an hour south of here, right through to Terrace Bay, which is sort of the north part of the lake where it starts to head back down. Yeah, so about 600 kilometers there that we're monitoring fish moving across. Yeah.
So no small feat to say the least in terms of the scale of that research project, but I understand that the experimental lakes research group and that area itself is also quite vast. Could you share with the audience a bit more about what the experimental lakes project is in terms of who's involved in it aside from just you at Lakehead and its reach essentially?
Yeah, for sure. So the experimental lakes area was founded in the late 1960s, really with the idea of trying to understand what what's the main nutrient that we should be limiting for trying to control algal blooms. And this was prompted around, you know, Lake Erie essentially being referred to as a dead lake. Like we would have like like literally tons of dead fish washing up there all the time. It was pea green. The Cayuga River was setting on fire on a fairly regular basis. Like it was a real mess. And so, um, but to try and answer the nutrient angle of that, they did a number of experiments. And the one sort of famous photo that you often see from the ELA is we had a lake. All our lakes are numbers up there. This one's Lake 226. And so it's got a very, very narrow section in the middle of this lake. And so what they did is they dropped a curtain down the middle. They added carbon and nitrogen to one side, carbon and nitrogen and phosphorus to the other. And it was the side that had phosphorus that turned green. And the nice thing about that is you could take that image to a policymaker in government and be like, look, what does this tell you about the nutrient that we need to control? And it led to the removal of phosphates from soaps and detergents like throughout North America and then ultimately globally to try and control nutrient levels into the Great Lakes. And so from there, things have really sort of spun out to look at a lot of other very important global contaminants. So looking at things like understanding how changing the amount of mercury deposition on a lake can alter contaminant accumulation in fish, which are a main food source, especially for indigenous folks on the landscape in Canada. Trying to understand what are the impacts of synthetic estrogen, which is really not very well removed from wastewater treatment plants, but ends up there a lot because of birth control pills, and trying to understand what the ecological implications of that are. So it really, so our microplastics experiment is sort of one in a long list of these emerging contaminants that, we often as a society will be like, hey, we've got this great new product, let's go and use it, without really fully understanding what the impacts are. And the nice thing about the experimental lakes area is we can understand a lot of the indirect impacts. Like you can put a fish in a lab, expose it to a chemical and see what it does. You might understand something about how that one fish responds or a group of that fish responds. But what it doesn't tell you about is how one group of organisms responding has knock-on effects on the whole rest of the ecosystem. And so at the ELA, we're able to understand those very subtle and oftentimes not really can be really hard to predict impacts of how impacting one component of that ecosystem can have downstream impacts on a whole bunch of other different things.
Certainly. So I mean, I'm drawing to my own conclusions, but for the sake of everyone else and even for myself, could you share with the audience a bit about what your anticipated outcomes or your hopes personally are with the research you're currently conducting?
Yeah, sure. So whether we're doing Great Lakes work or work at the experimental lakes area or elsewhere, a main push of my research is to try and do work that's going to help inform better environmental policy and ultimately help provide information to help us understand how better to restore ecosystems from an impacted state. So, a lot of the work that we do at ELA goes directly to informing policy, like what are safe levels of contaminants that can go in the ecosystem before you might expect to see impacts. And do these whole lake experiments provide better insight than just doing lab exposures, which is where a lot of those cutoffs are now currently set. Or looking at applying new technologies like eDNA technologies to try and understand when we can take eDNA out of sediment cores in lakes, we can actually try and piece together what those ecosystems looked like before they were impacted. We might show up there and just know that it's a dead lake because it's been impacted by industry for the past 50 years and we didn't know what was there beforehand. These new technologies that are emerging are going to help us understand what used to be there so that if we can clean that system up, it'll better inform what kind of community and what kind of fish community that lake can support, outside of us just having to guess and throw whatever in there because it's easy. So, yeah.
Certainly, that sounds very interesting. I'm sure that, like you said, affecting policy is always the hopes and aspirations of most research. But by the sounds of it, at the very earliest stages of the ELA, they had some pretty profound impacts on some major industries within soaps and detergents. I'm sure to the audience, they're curious as they have the prospects to hopefully join Lakehead University one day. What can they anticipate in terms of getting involved with research like yours or even research within the classroom in their coursework?
So I think the first piece of advice I would say is just try and get to know your professors. Like, I think the more that you can go to their websites, try and understand what kind of work they're doing. That will, in some ways, help you find people that are aligned with the things that get you excited, right? I mean, I think that's ultimately what you want to do if you're going to be like, is research for me? You want to try and seek out people who are doing stuff that gets you excited and that you find is really cool. And then, I think especially for my program, which involves a lot of field research, we're always like every summer, we're looking for students who want to come out and help with graduate research and help out with a lot of the other research that we're doing every summer. And so whether that's sort of formally as a research assistant through the university or informally by getting hired through different partner organizations that we work with, whether it's the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources or at the ELA, which hires a bunch of summer students every year as well. Getting involved at that level and trying to understand, just getting your hands dirty and being like, what does this field research involve? And then from there, I think people have the opportunity to do things like an undergraduate thesis, particularly if, you can collect a small amount of data that can go a long way in terms of doing an undergrad thesis, or even ultimately thinking about doing graduate school, whether it's here or somewhere else where you can build off the experience that you've had through working with people in the field, and then taking that and learning from other people who have different expertise and experience to sort of build your career moving forward.
I'm really glad you mentioned the idea around undergraduate thesis to get your feet wet or to get your hands dirty in the idea of understanding what is research take to actually conduct it and to hypothesize the outcomes, all that sort of thing. And then even your mention of moving on to grad school, having a pathway for undergrad students to move right into the next level of studies here at Lakehead for students elsewhere in the world to join us at that higher level. Or, I mean, we'll recognize the success of our programs. Our professors are world renowned, but they may not have the distinct alignment to your desired research area. And so perhaps taking your Lakehead degree and going elsewhere, it's a very successful route. We've seen great success for our grads going elsewhere, but oftentimes we do see them stick around. They typically build strong relationships in our small classroom environment, so that's always exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
With that being said, I think that covers sort of the questions I had. I want to thank you again for joining us, Dr. Rennie.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jordan.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, I want to encourage you to comment below or connect with us on social media. We can be found at Lakehead International on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for watching once again, and hopefully we'll see you at the next live webinar. Bye for now.